Happy 4th of July for all my American peeps out there. 250 years of American existence celebrated with cookouts, summer fun, and high-ordnance explosive fireworks probably banned in other countries because America. For better or for worse, sometimes worse given recent years, American patriotism has been the forefront of most of America's pop culture zeitgeist. While there's some discussion to be had about how excessive we can be about it compared to other countries, particularly in the realm of people who use the flimsier forms of patriotism either in place of a personality or to mask their uglier natures, today we're going to look at patriotism specifically through superheroes. Patriotic-themed superheroes are as indicative of America as cherry pie and Pabst Blue Ribbon. While definitely propaganda pieces in more cynical hands, they can be an amazing analysis and critique of our country's ideals and potential in the right creative hands. So today we'll be looking at the good, the bad, and the it's complicated of America's star-spangled superheroes. Hey team, Phantom Skull the Super Security VTuber here, and for Independence Day we're looking at some patriotic-themed superheroes and one psychotic man-child wrapped in the American flag. We'll also be talking about their natures as American icons or commentaries on American patriotism in the modern day, for better or for worse. So let's get some burgers and links on the grill as we check out these red, white, and blue capes. So disclaimers before we begin. These will be small snippets on these characters, specifically on their patriotic superhero aspects, over an extensive deep dive into their character histories. So beyond the most basic of introductions, we're gonna keep things tight and assume you know who most of these characters are. Plus, I was racing the clock in between my other video productions to get this out on Independence Day weekend, along with all the usual yucky working adult responsibilities, so we had to keep things nice and concise here. While these are more general looks at these characters, there will be spoilers for each character here and there. That being said, there will be heavy plot spoilers for Homelander, so fair warning. And as obvious as this should be, it does need to be said. This video is going to get a little political.
Sweet mother of God.
Shocking, given it's about a quartet of American flag-themed characters, I know, but it needed to be said, particularly when we get to these two. If this isn't a topic you want to hear or discuss, more power to ya. I'll see you all next week for more of my adventures with Superman yapping. Partially related, given the, discourse around Kamen America, don't come into this thinking me talking about her is either an endorsement or a hit piece. I was challenged to find a somewhat positive conservative superhero I felt comfortable platforming on my channel, and Kamen America was as close as I could find in a sea of cringy, red-pilled psychopathic characters who only the most you miss the point of Fight Club level of media literates would consider heroic characters. But in the grand scheme of things, as dumb as Kamen America's plots are for me, the character herself is a pretty okay vanilla conservative superhero, and I did want to try and find some decent balance for this video, given that its roster is two of the most, depending on the writer, aggressively left-of-center American heroes in the big two and, well, f***ing Homelander. So Miss Vanders here felt like the closest right-of-center character that lacked the usual depending on the writer problem the rest have. And to be clear, while I don't have 100% nice things to say about Kamen America as a story, I don't hate it. I'm not the type to waste my ever-limited video production time making hate videos, as I'm not looking for bullshit drama. There are far worse things out there than Kamen America, and making call-out videos on things you hate is just free advertising in the end and defeats the entire purpose of what you're trying to do with that. Check it out for yourself, vow to never touch it, I don't care what you do with your own time and money. But I'm still gonna talk about it, my problems with it and all. Also, none of this specifically concerns the VTuber Kamen America, who is just doing her own thing.
I think I deserve a hamburger for all my hard work.
She seems fun. With that out of the way, let's start by looking at my GOAT of this list.
And on my soul, I swear that until my dream of a world where dignity, honor, and justice are the reality we all share, I'll never stop fighting. Ever.
Superman is a frequent flyer when it comes to my channel. The Man of Steel is second only to the Man Out of Time we'll be discussing next when it comes to being an American icon in the superhero medium. Superman in many ways was and still is one of the greatest stories of an American hero. A lost, displaced foreigner from a dying planet who was raised with love by kindly foreign parents who taught him real American values. Those values being courage, empathy, humility, and to strive to be better than the worst amongst them. While his overall beliefs suffer under the same curse of all Big Two comics, that being whoever's in charge of editorial at the time, there's still a lot of core elements that have remained evergreen. A godlike being with endless humility and, more importantly, empathy for all living beings. Superman is the best of humanity in general, but he's also the best of what it means to be an American too. Superman cares little for politics beyond when someone is in danger or when confronted with a societal problem he can't punch. He's shown time and again that while he won't go out of his way to enforce his personal will on others, he will step in when others attempt to do the same against those who can't fight back. While Supes may not have all the answers to society's problems, he always strives to show people a better way over giving in to humanity's inclination to cynicism, hatred, and self-serving greed. While his tagline was updated to make him a hero for everyone, he continues to fight for the American way while still fighting for a better tomorrow. It's not really a coincidence that his most prevalent and ever-present greatest enemies are a petty, xenophobic billionaire and a nihilistic authoritarian. Superman as a concept has always been an antithesis to these self-serving and vile aspects of humanity. Hell, as I've covered in the past, Superman is one of the only fictional characters that can claim the feat of crippling our real-life hate group. That's the power of the Man of Steel's influence. But Supes hasn't always had the rosiest of interpretations over the years. There's been plenty of, frankly silly critiques of him as a propaganda piece for the worst of American nationalism. I'm sure you could find a random run or an Elseworlds tale covering that. Miller's Dark Knight Returns comes to mind. It is the unfortunate part of a character owned by a company that has had almost a century of writers interpreting him in different ways. However, his creators, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, two Jewish immigrants, originally created him as the ultimate immigrant hero, a strange visitor from another planet, whose original title was The Champion of the Oppressed. His tagline of truth, justice, and the American way would come during World War II as Supes joined many fictional characters in inspiring others against the tyranny of the Nazis and sticking with him long after. The controversial change to truth, justice, and a better tomorrow caused a massive divide amongst fans and Americans in general. Some saw it as a betrayal of his status as an American icon simply for sales, while others saw it as a good change given how Superman has broader appeal to many, not just Americans. The truth is, in the debate between Supes being an American or global icon, the answer is he's both. Superman is supposed to be the best of humanity, ironically in the form of a godlike alien. While he represents the greatest of us all, it's his humble Americana ideals from his loving Earth parents, the Kents, and his childhood in the kindly farm town of Smallville that defines those human qualities. Clark considers himself a patriot, but has and will go against his government when they cross a line. The accusation of him blindly following the US government has always been silly. To put it plainly, Superman is proud to be an American. However, he also views himself as a citizen of the world. One who's willing to help out in any way he can regardless of political boundaries, even those set by his own government. At a time when xenophobia is on the rise, and the very nature of what it means to be an American is under attack by the maliciously ignorant, Superman continues to be an evergreen story for those not lost to their hatred. Clark Kent, Kal-El, whichever name he goes by, is an immigrant. A man often hated, treated with suspicion, and smeared as a dirty, scary alien out to hurt real humans. Despite this, he never lets it damage the earnest ideals his adopted parents instilled in him, and strives to do the absolute best he can for everyone who needs him, like a real American. Despite the warbling of the Lex Luthors of social media desperate for the Man of Steel to espouse their bullshit, since the only other character to is Captain Crazy, who we'll cover later. Superman, even in his earliest days, was a defender of the downtrodden, a fighter against the corrupt, and a champion of all, and I mean all. While this means little in this era of malicious ignorance and consequenceless cruelty, Superman, even in the 40s, was an unapologetically progressive hero. A man who refused to use his powers to enforce his will, who respected and loved all people, regardless of race, gender, identity, or sexuality choice. The Man of Tomorrow is a beacon of hope for all, and a warrior against the intolerant and the cruel. While his status as an American icon is in constant debate with the ever uglier side of American political discourse, Superman remains the gold standard of those humble foreign folk ideals and showcasing the absolute best of not just an American, but humanity as a whole. But there is definitely one man he would humbly share that spot with.
The price of freedom is high. It always has been. And it's a price I'm willing to pay. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But I'm willing to bet I'm not.
The Star-Spangled Man with a plan who was punching Nazis before it was in style, Captain America is the OG all-American hero. Steve Rogers, a kid from the Bronx, was born weak and sickly, but given incredible power by a super soldier serum that died with its creator. But like Supes, it's not the powers that define the man, but the man himself. Steve was a weakling only in the physical sense. In character, courage, and willpower, he was the mightiest of us all. He was someone desperate to join the army to fight in World War II, not for personal glory or to prove his haters wrong. He simply did it because people needed help, and his mom always taught him to stand up to bullies and defend those who can't defend themselves. That's ultimately why the super soldier serum doesn't twist him like it does others. While the exact nature of the serum changes medium to medium, overall it does drive those with darker, selfish, and more malicious personalities to madness. Honest and loving Steve went from a good man to a good Superman. Hell, his iconic shield is the most blatant visual representation of this. Instead of a weapon, he uses a shield, a symbol of defense and protection. Granted, he's probably caught a body or two throwing that thing as an oversized discus with that super strength, but shh, we're not gonna talk about that. Cap's politics can be tricky to talk about, as we'll cover in a bit. Ignoring the simple fact his baseline empathy and willingness to fight for those marginalized and oppressed would make him a dirty left-wing commie in today's dumber circles, but I digress. Steve is a man who believes in the American dream over the state itself in modern times. He often differentiates between America's foundational ideals and the actual government. When it becomes corrupt, oppressive, or overreaching, he has historically rebelled against it. Steve Rogers is many things, but a bootlicker isn't one of them. Cap was always written as the best of us, and America's unrelenting courage. No matter if public opinion changed or his enemy became his own government, he always stood for freedom and the rights of everyone, and nothing shows this better than his very first appearance. Now, everyone knows about him punching out Hitler. You might be asking, so what? Every good hero was beating up Nazis back then. Bonk! What's important to this video is when Cap decked Dear Leader. This iconic cover came out on December 20th, 1940, a whole year before America officially joined the war effort. This came at a time when a lot of apathetic Americans did not want to get involved in another conflict overseas, along with a concerning amount of America's worst who were resonating with the Nazis' Aryan supremacy bullshit. Cap's creators Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, two Jewish American creatives, put targets on their backs with this comic. It sparked outrage, and they received death threats alert from pro-Nazi groups. It was a political statement wrapped in a two-fisted funny book that would change comics forever. Keep that in mind next time a blue-check idiot is whining about how they keep shoving politics into superhero comics. Similar to Supes' iconic villains, it's unsurprising that Cap's greatest nemesis, the Red Skull, is his perfect antithesis. A vile authoritarian who worms his way into every societal facet to try and make his twisted anti-freedom death cult the norm. Hell, there was a time when he became a parody of a modern-day right-wing podcaster. But no matter the scheme, and no matter how successful he is at turning people to his apathetic and cruel views, Steve Rogers remains as stalwart as the American ideals he continues to fight for, and will always get back up to send creeps like him packing. Similar to Soups, the Captain isn't without his fair share of bad runs that paint him as a gymnastic strong arm of the US government. For a lot of his earlier appearances, this wasn't that far off. Steve in the past was a staunch defender of the state and following its orders like a good soldier, thinking they knew best. But one of the biggest strengths of Marvel was its willingness to let their heroes change with the times and real-life events. And Steve would have a harrowing awakening of the darker side of America that would change his entire views for the modern age. There's two pivotal comic runs that best showcase this change in Cap from agent of the state to hero of all that will be condensing greatly for time, but that I recommend you check out. The first is from Steve Englehart's Secret Empire storyline. The climax of an ongoing battle with the Secret Empire, more or less as close to neo-Nazis as they could get in a Comics Code era funny book, sees Cap unmask their leader, only to discover that it was really a high-ranking US government official, whose face is never shown, who proceeds to Alt F4 himself in the Oval Office rather than be taken alive. The shock of this reveal sends Cap reeling, questioning his reason for being Captain America, and whether if there's any true American vision that he can embody as a hero in the then modern age. This would shake him to the point of giving up the Captain America identity and becoming Nomad for 7 issues. It should be noted that, despite never revealing his face, it's greatly implied the Secret Empire leader was Richard Nixon, given how the story was written at the height of the Watergate scandal. This was a very pivotal moment in American history. I know these days people have become apathetic to the president being a scumbag, but back then, the President of the United States being caught in such a criminal scandal, mixed with the height of the Vietnam War, caused massive disillusionment amongst Americans. Englehart was well aware of this and knew he couldn't ignore it while writing Captain America. I was writing a man who believed in America's highest ideals at a time when America's president was a crook. I could not ignore that. The second storyline, this one during Mark Gruenwald's run, would solidify Cap's modern identity as an uncompromising defender of all, and cut him completely from the notion of being an arm of the government. During a pivotal storyline, Cap found himself under scrutiny by the Commission of Superhuman Activities. They surmised because Cap's super soldier serum was bankrolled by Uncle Sam, his powers, shield, and entire identity were the property of the US government, so they expected Steve to answer to them. Steve would give it all up, costume, shield, and all, refusing to let himself be compromised by a political agenda he didn't agree with. During this time, the role of Captain America was given by the Commission to everyone's favorite star-spangled dick with a blick, John Walker, aka the future US agent. Walker's disastrous tenure as Cap was a dark time for the Marvel Universe, showing a murderous Captain America who was 100% loyal to the US government, no matter how shady or immoral the job. Cap would eventually retake the title and shield from Walker, who even he admitted wasn't the man for the job, and told the Commission to kick bricks. These events would help Rogers come to terms with the fact he was the one who made Captain America what it is, and not the other way around. No matter the time period, Captain America remains an evergreen defender of liberty and the rights of all. Someone who, even when evil becomes the norm, and confronted by the mob, the press, and even his own government to move, he will proudly stand his ground and tell them to move. A man out of time, but never out of conviction, that's the star-spangled man we know and love.
You need me to save you! You do. I am the only one who possibly can. You're not the real heroes. I'm the real hero.
They say when fascism comes to America, it will be draped in a flag and carrying a cross. That quote often gets misinterpreted a lot, but the simplest reading of it is that when evil ideology tries to worm its way into American society, It will disguise itself with the flimsiest caricatures of our most superficial ideas on patriotism and faith, and twist them into a malicious parody of all that our country stands for. None in media showcases this better than the boys' depraved top soup, the Homelander. Homelander himself is a complete bastardization of everything Superman stands for. In many ways, he's the answer to what would happen if someone like Lex Luthor had Supes' powers. Born and raised in a lab by the soulless megacorp Vought International, Homelander was groomed to be the ultimate product. The perfect, unstoppable, all-American superhero and leader of the Seven. Now, calling Homelander a superhero is a big stretch. To be honest, using that title for any of Vought's superpowered fuck-ups is a bit facetious, since they're almost all horrible people and are considered superheroes by branding and name only. However, Homelander takes it to a whole other level. I'm going to be brief with him, as I already have a whole character video about him in production, so we'll stick mostly to his fraudulent Americana vibes and characterization here. Much like how he's a complete fake demon when you take away his powers, he's also a fake patriot in every sense of the word. Everything about him, his red, white, and blue color scheme, his eagle iconography, his fakest of Christian nationalism-flavored religious values, is just soulless, empty pageantry constructed by his megacorpo overseers. Homelander is everything authoritarian losers dream Superman should be, without a single hint of irony that everything about him is taking the piss out of their bullshit ideology. Homelander, whether people agree with what the show is saying or not, is a flying metaphor for the absolute worst of the modern American right wing as an ideology. A petty, vicious, fascist-coded creature coated in the flimsiest red, white, and blue paint job, claiming it wants to save America while gleefully burning everything down around them. But as Homelander would show over the course of 5 seasons, much like most fascists, he was just a flash-in-the-pan bully who had no idea what to do beyond death and destruction. Fascists are good at usurping power, but terrible at actually leading. Homelander is that destructive ineptitude coalesced into a grotesque parody of a human being. Almost every plot he attempted, be it his scheming to make Supe terrorists to justify superheroes in the military, his takeover of Vought, and his eventual insurrection of the entire country, while finding small victories during all of those, would all eventually blow up in his face. Because ultimately the Man-Child of Steel was his own worst enemy before Billy Butcher or Starlight. Despite how much he was hyped up by his bootlickers and his own ego, Homelander was a massive idiot who had no idea what he was doing most of the time. A parody of a man with delusions he was a god who could barely tie his own shoes at the end of the day. That's ultimately what makes me laugh with the types that unironically stan Homelander as this based, tragic demon simply because he's a crazy strong, aura-farming, right-leaning Superman parody who's edgy and racist and strong in air quotes. And they just ignore how much of a fucking loser he is. He barely knew how to fight since his powers gave him an unfair advantage, and left him a floundering, blubbering child when either fighting someone of greater strength and better skill, or a pathetic coward begging for his life and willing to debase himself the second he lost his powers. He was a depraved, psychopathic man-child with a breast milk fetish and an Oedipus complex whose biggest op in Season 1 wasn't Butcher, but a literal baby. And almost every scene that wasn't him threatening to laser someone's brains out was him being the most sexually repressed weirdo even by the show's very fucked up standards. People often forget this iconic line.
I'm the Homelander. And I can do whatever the I want.
Was followed up eventually by him ineffectually whimpering it while working his own flagpole over the city in impotent rage at being outplayed by the heroes. Homelander was always a loser when stripped of his advantages and slick PR team, and why he was doomed to fail even with his small victories right up to his deservedly pathetic end. He's a foul but poignant warning to always look past the flag-waving and zippy patriotic taglines when confronting people who drape themselves in the most superficial of a nation's aesthetics, and beware those seeking power when claiming they want to save the country, because more often than not, much like Homelander, the mask is quick to drop when confronted with the truth.
Take flight, Kamen America. Make right, Kamen America.
Kamen America is a complicated character to discuss. She's a very patriotic-themed heroine in a very conservatively coded superhero story that's supposed to be 100% apolitical. The Star-Spangled Gal was a challenge in me navigating my own biases, but still seeing the blatantly obvious, I'm not going to lie. Because on a surface-level read of it, it's easy to see her story almost like a hollow propaganda parody segment cooked up by Vart for Homelander and their soups. Except it wasn't done ironically.
Why the long face?
Antifa.
But let's give it a shot. Carly Vandos is an all-American girl who loves fashion design and wants to help her nation. During a USO performance for American troops, she's hit by irradiated space debris and given incredible powers to control electricity. After a disastrous and unfulfilling first outing as a different heroine under a sleazy talent agency owned by, Deku's long-lost deadbeat dad? She becomes the superheroine known as Kamen America, the red, white, and blue defender of the innocent and also a fashion designer. She's soon joined by a whole squad of similarly powered, costume-themed girlies who face multiple threats such as the mud monster making Vermilion Masquerade, whose real identity hits Carly too close to home, and the Prestige Corporation's very apolitical plot to fake a climate crisis for power and control, while bankrolling a group of evil, diversity-focused discount Power Rangers. Yeah, I have my work cut out for me here. Carly in a vacuum is a pretty harmless character. She's an all-American girl next door who, like Captain America, believes in personal freedom and letting people express themselves the way they want to. Admittedly, this is usually framed in her being pressed by others to be less feminine and traditional by very unflattering strawmen of feminist and progressive parody characters. So take that with the finest grain of salt. Carly in the first few books is a woman finding her place in a messy, complicated America. As her common crew grows, she finds camaraderie with people who see her for who she is over what the media spins. But perhaps her strongest aspect is her strength of character and conviction to maintain her personal beliefs over folding to others either for fame or a payday. This would be showcased best with her conflict with her first villain, the Earth-manipulating artist Vermilion Masquerade. This femme fatale had a particular obsession with dressing down and humiliating Carly, almost to a spiteful degree. Eventually she would be revealed to have been her mousy best friend Vicky, who was hit with the same power-granting space debris. Vicky always resented how she was pushed into a STEM career field she had no passion for over her art, and how she let Carly's scumbag ex-agent convince her to become a heel and make monsters to make Carly more marketable, and how she wasn't marketable herself. She hated how Carly got everything she ever wanted while she compromised like she felt they were supposed to and was left to languish in obscurity. Kamen America rightfully points out Vicky always had a choice. Nobody was putting a gun to her head to bend to societal pressures, and Carly got where she was because she put in the work and persevered over the people trying to fit her into their own box of expectations. After stopping her crashing out frenemy and starting her on the path to redemption, she'd continue her adventures as a superhero and fashion designer with the Common Corps, with far more totally apolitical enemies to face. The first 4 volumes really showcase Carly as a person who strongly believes in both personal freedom but also personal responsibility. While sometimes life and other factors can pistol whip you across the face, we're still the masters of our own destinies. It's unfortunately past volume 4 that the books fall deeper into red-pilled nonsense despite their claims of it being timeless apolitical tales that eventually caused me to fall out of the series. Beyond finding the new batch of villains and stories to be so obnoxious you'd swear it was your estranged uncle's Facebook rants over a storyline, the refusal to even own that in the story kinda hurts Carly as a character in my opinion. Outside looking in, it's easy to see Kamen America as just a shallow use of surface-level Americana imagery for anime-esque sex appeal, which I'd surmise is a lot of why it's found more of an audience in Japan than the West, given the large voluptuous fan art of her from that scene. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. The cheesecake superhero goodness is what originally attracted me to the earlier books before its heavily right-leaning writing and the refusal to own that eventually drew me away from it. And from asking around, I'm not the only one who just checked it out for the nice anime-esque booby art of adult superheroines and tried to drone out the red-pilled nonsense. But the story pairing Carly with these very blatantly political plots and wanting to pretend it's all apolitical makes her come off shallower than she should be. And real talk, pulling the apolitical card on a blatantly political themed character is just plain silly. We just spent the entire video going over how all these characters are responses to political moments of our time. Superman has been in the forefront of hot-button issues since even his earliest adventures, including confronting the rise of the KKK as a political group, and how his influence through his radio show turned people against them. Some of Captain America's most iconic stories and moments were direct reflections of the changing political landscape at the time. And while you could critique how the boys had the subtlety of a screaming crackhead with a chainsaw about it, Homelander was head to cape a scathing critique of the worst aspects of the modern American right. Kamen America, while I heavily don't agree with some of its plot points, passes an admittedly low bar with conservative media for me, but its attempts to make their very political heroine apolitical hurts the core aspects of Carly as a character. Her entire persona is a woman who sticks to her ideals no matter what the press or public opinion demands of her. And a lot of her stories have her needing to take a stand on a hot-button issue, and all of them almost certainly very political. Despite its fans touting it as a superior answer to the unfairly political Big Two comics, end of the day, Kamen America is pretty par the course for the average Captain America storyline, just with politics they agree with and a whole lot of ass shots. And again, not that there's much wrong with that last thing. After all, old Cap could give the Common Corps gals a run for their money in that department. America's ass indeed. Look, despite what some may say after this video, I do want a conservative superhero that doesn't give me the ick. I may not agree with a lot of things about Kamen America as a story, but I support its creators' rights to make it how they want, as much as I have a right to critique its plot lines. Because nothing I say is really gonna change much. They've clearly found their niche in the indie book scene, and are doing well on their own regardless of what I have to say on the subject. I want to like Kamen America, but as she is, I just can't get behind this authentic heroine stuck in such inauthentic stories. Regardless, Kamen America may be a hot mess trying to navigate an even messier nation while trying to save the day. She and her Common Corps comrades at least do it in style. While comics aren't always or need to be political, the dog-whistling bullshit about forced politics in superhero comics in particular has always been asinine. Especially since it always turns out to be an engagement-baiting chud whinging about the smallest progressive plot point while telling you to ignore their totally based, not political word vomit of opinions. But when you don those stars and stripes, regardless of your intentions, it will be a political statement, and there's nothing wrong with that. What's important is what your intent is with that character. Be it a shining beacon for others to follow as a positive example, or a grim warning to beware monsters masked in a mockery of those aesthetics. American patriotic-themed superheroes can be, and have been far more than just cheap marketing propaganda. Much like how the A on Cap's head doesn't stand for authoritarian, this flag isn't on my security uniform for ironic reasons. I'm a born and raised American, and I'm also Native American. I have a complicated relationship with my country given that background. In spite of that, I am proud to be an American. And much like Cap, Supes, and I hope Kamen America, I believe in the dream of a better tomorrow for all, free from the manipulations of the Lex Luthors, Red Skulls, and Homelanders of our own reality. Our country's in a bad spot regardless of where you are on the political aisle. While I don't want to bring down the mood on the Big 250, it's important to keep your eyes and ears open to what's happening in our backyards, and realize we should and can do better. Patriotic superheroes in the right hands can inspire others in that regard. While we may not agree on things, it's important to always be ready to fight for our rights, and the rights of those who can't fight for themselves. Because that's what this holiday is all about. Celebrating our freedom and our responsibility to a better future for all Americans, be they born here or make this land their new home. Much like these star-spangled saviors, it's up to us to step up and make the America we celebrate and honor what it is. Thanks for watching, and happy Independence Day. Hey, thanks for checking out my video. If you liked it, I'd appreciate a like and a comment, as both help the channel grow and tells YouTube you want to see more videos like this. Who are your favorite patriotic superheroes? What are your opinions on the quartet I talked about? Let me know down below. Be sure to subscribe for more super security VTuber fun. While I took a break from it to get this video out on time, I will be returning to regular streaming next week, so come check me out here or on Twitch. We have a lot of fun and would love to see you there. More superhero videos coming soon, so I hope to see you all next time. Until then, have a safe Independence Day weekend and take care of each other.